What's up, metalheads? I'm Jamie, this is the Blades and EDC channel, and welcome to another episode of Versus, where we are going to put the Kansept Main Street up against the Kizer Critical Mini. Very similar blade shapes here, although you do have different deployment methods, but these are two very similar knives, in my opinion. And if I were looking for one of these knives, I would be considering both of them. You know, if this is the knife I was looking for and researching, and I came across this knife, I would check this one out also. You know what I mean? So we're going to go over the specs of each, and I'm going to give my thoughts on each and which one I think is a better value or better knife. So let's jump right into it. We're going to start with the specs on these knives. All right. We'll start with the Kansept. All right, the overall length of the Kansept, we'll just go back and forth. Overall length is 7.92 inches. The overall length of the Kizer is 7.31 inches. So the Kansept is a bit longer. Blade length on the Kansept is 3.36 inches. Blade length on the Kizer is 2.8 inches. The Kansept is CPM, or 154 cm. The Kizer is CPM 3V blade steel. Both on ceramic ball bearings. Both have ceramic ball detents. The Main Street has a titanium clip. The Critical Mini has a folded steel clip. Both are brown micarta. Very different micarta, but both are micarta. And both are Wharncliffe blades. The Kizer has a flipper tab and hole deployment. And the Kansept is thumb stud deployment only. Although, man, they could have made this a front flipper. Every time I look at this, I think to myself, they could have made this a front flipper so easy. Just a little bit more steel and some jimping, could have been a front flipper. Then there would be no competition between these two, in my opinion. So let's talk ergos first. Ergos on the Main Street are really good. They're fantastic. No hot spots anywhere. Feels really good in hand. The micarta feels really good in hand. No sharp edges. Pocket clip is there, but completely, you know it's there, but it's not a hot spot at all. It's so flat and slender and right in the middle of the handle, so it just vanishes into your pocket. It is not a reversible pocket clip, which makes this side look better. No hole there for a clip, so I appreciate when they do that. I know lefties will not, but you know, it is what it is. The Kizer Critical Mini, the micarta does feel better than the Kansept. I'm going to give the micarta scales to the Kizer for sure. They feel better in hand, they feel softer to the touch, and they're slightly more grippy than the Kansept. Yeah, they have a little more texture to them and softness to them, what makes it feel better in hand. And surprisingly, this pocket clip vanishes into the hand also. Ergos are really good, no hot spots anywhere. This clip vanishes completely in your hand. You don't even notice it. You can tell the Kansept is there, but it's not a hot spot. This one is completely gone. You don't even know it's there. One thing about the ergos too, I'm going to count this jimping as ergos. This has jimping here on top of the blade. It's not very good jimping. It's not super sharp. It doesn't provide a lot of traction, but it does provide a little traction. The Kansept, they did just something for aesthetics here basically. It's not jimped on the top. It's kind of jimped on the side. It doesn't provide any traction at all. It's just for aesthetics, so it doesn't really do anything. As far as ergos go, I'm going to have to give it to the Kizer Critical Mini. They are slightly better, even though I don't like the flipper. But the flipper helps with the ergos on this. It helps lock your finger in there. Yeah, I'm going to give the ergos to the Kizer Critical Mini. They're going to win in the ergo department. I should also point out that the Kizer does have a lanyard hole with a micarta backspacer there. The Kansept Main Street does not have a backspacer or a lanyard hole. So, aesthetics of these two knives. Let's look at these aesthetics. Which one looks better? Well, that's a tricky one because they're very, very similar looking knives. One's a little larger, obviously, but overall they look very similar. I think this one looks better because of the titanium clip and the lack of a flipper. Makes the profile look better in my opinion. Overall, I think it's a better looking knife. So I'm going to give aesthetics to the Kansept, Ergos to the Kizer. Both are really comfortable though. When I say one is better than the other, they're both fantastic ergonomically. Can't go wrong with either one of them. But for me and my hand size, the Kizer just feels better. And the fact this clip completely vanishes. It's like it's not even there. I can slightly feel the clip on this one. So ergos are going to go to the Kizer. Aesthetics are going to go to the Kansept, but aesthetics are purely subjective. So let's talk about action. So we will start, well, let's start with the Kizer. This has, I got to point out right off the bat, this has that Kizer sound on the bearings. I don't know how to explain it. Almost every Kizer I've ever had, you can hear it. It's tight as it can get, but you can hear the bearings. It's just a Kizer thing on some Kizer knives. Don't know why it does it. I've disassembled many Kizer knives, and this one just, this is one of those that you hear it. So it doesn't affect the action. The action's really good on this knife. The detent is fantastic. This may be a non-fellable knife. I'm going to try to fell it here in just a second. The detent's fantastic. It seems like they've got the detent tuned for the flipper, and this flipper is really good. You can push button it, but the light switch is much better. You get much more leverage with the light switch. The push button works fine, and it's comfortable too, but the light switch is better, in my opinion, more comfortable, and you get more leverage, and that blade just whips out of there. I'm trying to fell it on the flipper right now. You hear that sound it makes to an open? It goes swoosh. The blade just goes swoosh. Sounds really good. Yeah, I can't fell it on the flipper. Let's try to fell it on the whole deployment. That failed because I was pushing so lightly, it opened, and then it caught my finger again. That's the thing with trying to fell with a hole. Your finger gets in the way when you're barely pushing. Did it again. I'm going to say it's non-fellable. I can fell it doing that, but that's nothing with the knife. That's because I'm pushing it open. I'm pushing so lightly before my finger gets out of the way, the blade is coming back and catching my finger. So, but the action on the Kizer is fantastic. It's excellent action. Now let's look at the ooh, the light just flickered on. Let's look at the Kansept now. Now this one is thumb stud deployment only. The detent, again, money. Nailed it on the detent on this one too. Both of them have perfectly dialed detents. They're dialed in for these knives perfectly. Let's try to fell it on the thumb flick. Now I caught my thumb. Yes, I can fell the Kansept. Yes, it is fellable. It does not have that sound on the bearings like the Kizer does, obviously. If you give it any effort whatsoever, you're not going to fell this knife, but it can be felled. On the drop, it takes a couple shakes to get this one down. On the drop on this one, same thing. Couple shakes, comes down. Action is going to go to the Kizer also, just because it is truly unfellable. You cannot fell this knife, no matter how hard you try. Once that detent breaks, that blade is locking open. There's no way around it. Again, with the Kansept, if you give it any effort whatsoever, it is going to deploy. But if you lightly push, I can fell it, like you see. So it's not really a problem with the knife, in my opinion. Just putting one against the other, it's noticeable in this situation, but I don't think it would ever become a problem for anybody to purchase this knife. It's a great knife. Let's see here. Let's talk about the steel real quick. So on the Kansept, you have 154cm blade steel, which is fantastic steel. I love 154cm. Now, I haven't sharpened either of these knives. Both these knives are for the knife cell. They're basically new. But I do have steels, with both of these steels. Quite a bit of experience with both of these steels. And I think 154cm is a better steel than CPM 3V, personally. I think it takes an edge better and holds it better. And I have been told that CPM 3V can tend to rust. I don't know how accurate that is. It's not as stainless as 154 CM from what I've been told. I cannot attest to that. I've never had any 3V rust on me, but yeah, as far as which steel I would prefer, I would take 154 CM over 3V every day of the week. I love 154 CM. I think it's a better blade steel. It's one of my favorites. I like it over some of the more premium steels out there, to be completely honest with you, including M390. I would take 154 CM over M390. So that's a personal thing for me, and I do sharpen all my knives, so you know, that's just in my experience. It's a better steel. Which knife is the better option? Well, for me personally, even though the action is better, the D10 is better on the Kizer, I prefer the Kansept for two reasons. I don't like a flipper, especially with a Wharncliffe blade. A flipper with a Wharncliffe blade to me makes no sense, because if you don't have that flipper in there, you can get the entire edge down and cut what you're trying to cut, right? The entire edge makes contact if you're for chopping task. With the flipper, I can only get the tip of that down if I want to do chopping. Now with push cuts, it's not going to matter. The flipper's not going to be in the way with push cuts, but I just think it's especially on a Wharncliffe blade. I do not like a Wharncliffe blade with a flipper. Some blades you can get away with it. It doesn't bother me as much. But with a Wharncliffe, I just think it's silly, especially if you got a hole in the blade. Why even put that flipper on there? You know what I mean? Could have been so much better if the flipper was gone. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they make versions of this knife that do not have a flipper. Let me look real quick. I've got this knife open on the internet right now. I'll link both these knives in the description also, by the way. I'll link on my White Mountain Knives. Use my discount code BEDC10 for 10% off. Does help support the channel somehow. I don't know how yet, but maybe one day I'll figure it out. All right, let's see if I think there's a non-flipper version of this knife, which if there is, it would be a much better comparison. Yes, there are thumb stud versions of this knife. So you can get this knife just like this knife, basically. And that would be a better comparison video, in my opinion, but I don't have the thumb stud version. Now, if this was that thumb stud version with no flipper, this knife would win. No doubt about it, hands down. Just because of the D10 alone. The D10 is dialed so perfectly. That may not be the case on the thumb stud version, though. But between these two here, the Kansept's going to win. And even though the Kizer has better action, in my opinion, I prefer the steel, the 154 CM, and I prefer it not to have a flipper. I think it's a much better knife that way. And honestly, I think this is a better knife with the 154 CM and the titanium pocket clip. Both these knives run about $80 each. So, you know, in my opinion, this one's $84 and this one's $82. In my opinion, this is a much better value, the Kansept is. So I would recommend the Kansept over this knife. Although, like I said, if I had the thumb stud version of this, I may feel differently, but I don't. So this is just you know, between these two, I think the Kansept Main Street is a much better knife. One thing to point out about this Main Street, though, it says Little Main Street on it. This is not the Little Main Street. They had some errors when they made some of these, and I put Little Main Street on it. On the Main Streets, the little one is much, much smaller. It's like a 2 1/4 inch blade. So, all right, guys, that's going to wrap it up. If you own both these knives, which one do you like better? Aesthetically, which one do you like better? And do you agree with me on a Wharncliffe with a flipper tab? Just doesn't make sense. Should not put a flipper tab on Wharncliffe blades, in my opinion. But, you know, I know some people out there like flippers and they're flipper-only people. And maybe they like Wharncliffe blades too. But for me personally, I'm not going to buy a knife that has a flipper and a Wharncliffe. It just doesn't make sense to me. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. And I will see you guys on the next one.